everyone. I'm Susan Birch, and welcome to another Health Detective podcast. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Carl Ficks. Carl is the founder of No Surrender, and he coaches people in reclaiming their wellness. He has a fascinating story that I'll let him share with you. Carl's mission in life is to be in service to his friends, family, colleagues, and the community. He likes to lead by example in both word and deed, and to live an empathetic, passionate, honest, and authentic life. So, Carl, thanks so much for coming along today.
Thank you, Susan, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you. So, would you tell us a little bit about your story, please, and your background, and how you went from being a successful lawyer to starting up No Surrender?
Sure. Thank you. I went to law school after college, and I graduated from law school in 1988, and I practiced law for many years. One of the reasons I went to law school is I was fascinated by it, but I also found it to be very competitive. And when I was growing up, I was a very competitive person. I loved to play sports. It was a big part of my life, and I thought that going into the law and litigation would be most closely aligned with that. And so that's what I did. And I was extremely passionate about it because you need to be passionate about it. And I practiced law for a very long time. I was in litigation, basically litigation and transactional. So I was in the courtroom a lot. And that was, I really enjoyed that. And then I always had a fitness component to my career, Susan, that allowed me to put in the hours that I did and do the work that I did. And I thought that my passion for fitness, which allowed me to practice law for more than 30 years, is something that it was a gift that I thought I could share with others, that something that allowed me to be resourceful throughout the years. And I decided to leave the law, and I founded this company, No Surrender. And now I'm speaking to groups. I'm doing legal education, continuing legal education, and some private coaching on how wellness allowed me to have a very long and I thought a productive and healthy career in the law.
Excellent. Do you work mostly with men, or do you work with mixed groups?
Mixed groups. In fact, I have two daughters, and we are very active together. And I speak to all kinds of groups. I spoke to a large group last week, and some of the feedback was how it resonated to both men and women. So that was some nice feedback. But one of my daughters is 21, one is 16. So I've had a wonderful time with them, watching them grow and being active in their lives. And we do a lot of fun things together. And that fitness allows that, and we can talk more about it, but that's yet another one of the reasons I do this.
So as a long career in law, and you've talked about how fitness enabled you to basically survive and manage that, what do you see some of the biggest health consequences for people in that kind of corporate life? So, which will be more than just law, it'll be across, sort of many areas. So what do you see as being the biggest issues for people? Sure.
And without a doubt, this crosses, it's multi-professional. It's not limited to the law. One that I found when I graduated from law school in 1988, the first 4 or 5 years of practice of law, I believe, like any career, are the formative years. And that's when you really have to put the time in. So it's a good foundation for the balance of your career. And I know during my time, I was focused solely on the practice of law. And despite I played sports when I was a kid, I played them in high school, I played them in college, I did them a little bit in law school. And then the first 4 or 5 years, I abandoned that, Susan, because I was so focused on the practice. And what I found was I had tremendous weight gain because I worked a lot of hours, and then I wouldn't eat dinner till 10 at night. And then I would go to bed at 10:30 because I knew I had to get up and do it over again. So I just got very much out of shape. And a lot of that had to do with weight gain. And that's not unique to the legal profession, I don't think. And I think we've seen that during the pandemic with a lot of folks. There are plenty of studies out there that are reflecting this weight gain, which is a disturbing trend, obviously. And then I also saw a lot of self-medication with other things that aren't so good, that you could just deal with it by having another beer or another glass of wine. So that leads to destructive behaviors, which we don't have to get into. Everybody knows what they are. So I think it's the weight gain that impacted me mostly. But then there are other things that I saw. And again, the long hours in the law, they're not limited to the law. A lot of professions are like that, small business owners and the like, and other professions, accountants, doctors, you name it. There's a lot of long hours. And the stressors, the external stressors, especially during the pandemic, have had a negative effect on a lot of people's mental health. And then you can take it from there.
Yeah, it's very interesting indeed. And I'm seeing more male clients, and I think we talk a lot more about our emotions. We talk more about the hormonal imbalances we have, and some of the sort of issues that we have. And I don't know whether men talk to other men about that stuff, but I'm seeing a lot of men now coming really concerned about that weight gain, about, loss of libido, difficulties with erections, brain fog, anger management, all those kinds of issues.
Yeah, I know in the States, there's this sense of languish, for lack of a better word. Obviously the bottom fell out of the world in March of 2020. We're now October of 21. Everybody thought this thing, they were talking about 6 or 8 weeks, and here we are 18, 19 months later. And we're heading, at least in the States, into winter. So there's this apprehension as if here we go again type thing. And the government, we have not gotten the clearest guidance from the government. And that's not a political statement. That's simply an observation. So people kind of feel whipsawed. And I think there's a certain amount of resignation, as if this is way beyond our control. So I'm just going to let go of a lot of things. And those include a lot of boundaries and a lot of things that people were very disciplined about. When those guide rails were taken away from them, you could fall out of form, and it's problematic. But to your point about the men, I think at least in the legal profession, there's this, I don't want to use the word toxic masculinity, but there is some machismo, as if if you have a problem, you can't speak up because that's some sign of weakness. If you're a trial lawyer, you have to just muscle through the pain, and I frankly don't think that works. And so
your company is working to do something about that. So can you talk a bit to the solutions you have for that?
Sure. So what I'm trying to share, Susan, are some strategies and tips that have helped me throughout my career. And again, I've worked the fitness component into that, which has been very helpful. One simple thing that I talk about is I like to work out in the morning. I'm a morning person. And I've found over the years, when you work out in the morning, the 3 C's, I call them the 3 C's, can't get you: the clients, colleagues, or the court. Because we all, when we're headed into work, we have a punch list of things we want to do, and the day can go sideways very, very fast. I found that if I get that workout in the morning, that's mine. I own that, and the colleagues, the clients, and the court cannot take it from me. So I was always mindful of that, to get a little workout in the morning. So that's a tip that I share that has allowed me, again, to have a long career in the law, and other things like that. That, hey, you may want to try this. I invite you to be curious about it. And again, these are things that have worked for me. So that's just one tip.
What are the common challenges that you see people facing in with regard to being committed long-term to their health and wellness?
I think the single biggest issue is time. Time there's a fixed amount of it, as we know, and people find other reasons or other ways to fill their time, and it seems like the fitness takes a back seat to that. When you're very, very busy, you don't often think of yourself. And a lot of folks are in the service business. We are in service to others, so we're constantly thinking about others and not ourselves. And another thing that a tip or strategy that I share is it's okay to be selfish, just a little bit. In order to be in service, I like to say you have to be. You actually have to be vertical, and you have to be breathing in order to be in service to others. So if you don't take care of yourself, all bets are off. So I think it's okay to take a little time for yourself. And perhaps another pithy example is Starbucks. People will go and wait 20 minutes in line for a coffee at Starbucks, and that they think nothing of that. Well, that's just me. I want my morning coffee. You could do a lot of fun workouts in 20 minutes that are very, very helpful. And I share some of those in my program. So it's a bit paradoxical to me that somebody would say it's okay to spend 20 minutes in line for your morning coffee, but not 20 minutes to work out. And it's a priority thing, and that folks are prioritizing that over perhaps just a little bit of a workout. So time is, I think, the biggest enemy. I've heard it described by others as the tyranny of time. That it's a tyrannical concept. So I think that's one of our biggest headwinds.
And I think it's very easy when you're sitting in front of a computer screen all day, or when, probably, as a lawyer or a doctor or any other professional where you're sort of engaging with people and all this technology, to just really lose interest and motivation. By the end of the day, you just don't want to get up and go and do something. I love being active. I love the outdoors, but boy, when I've spent a day in front of this machine here, I have to really drag myself kicking and screaming out the door.
I agree with you 100%. And I know from personal experience, the law firm that I was with for many years, we closed our doors for the first, half of the pandemic. A skeleton crew came in. My law firm was 10 miles or 15 to 20 kilometers from my house. And we were 3 floors in a city office building. And there were about 10 or 12 of us that came in every day. And I was one of those folks. And I went in for multiple reasons. One is I had a lot of boxes with a lot of paper. 2 is it was very, very quiet. 3 is I lived close to it. But I found it was very helpful for me to get in there and have some sort of routine. But to your point, because I was not going to court or interacting with colleagues or interacting with judges, I would work, maybe 9 to 4. So that's 7 hours. And by the end of those 7 hours, Susan, I thought, wow, boy, that was a busy day. Yet when things were up and running pre-COVID, you could go 10, 11, 12 hours and think nothing of it because you had so much more stimulation. You would drive to court to argue a motion, or you would drive to another law office to take a deposition, or you would go to a client's company to meet them, or go to a job site. There was a lot of stimulation and you on the go. So I would do 7 to 6. No problem, 11 hours. I found during the pandemic, even though I was going in the office, I thought 7 hours, okay, I thought, okay, that's a good day, and I'm tired and I'm ready to go. So it was a little odd to me that it had that effect. Even though I was working out in the morning, I'd get my workout in, I'd still go into the office, but even after 7 hours, I would feel this kind of fatigue or malaise because nobody knew what was going on in the world. It was a time fraught with a lot of uncertainty, and that, I think, that wears on people.
Yeah, we've certainly got that here at the moment. Auckland's in level 3 lockdown for another 2 weeks, and lockdowns here are really draconian. You know, I believe they're far more restrictive than just about anywhere else in the world, and people are struggling. You know, and it's exactly as you say. It's the uncertainty of not knowing what the future will be, or being able to plan.
Right. I mean, we are not we're not designed for this. I don't think we're social beings. I joked with one of my daughters. Uh, the Connecticut court system they had a platform, and we would argue motions via Zoom. I believe Zoom was the platform, or Microsoft Teams, one of them. And before I left the firm, I was home one night, and my daughter asked me how it went today. How was work? And I said, it was fine. I said, and I had an argument in court. She said, you went to court? I said, no, I was in my office and we argued on the computer. And she said, how was it? And I joked with her. I said, well, when you are in court physically, you're walking, you're talking, and you're stalking. And I said, when you're sitting in your office, you're certainly not walking and you're certainly not stalking. All you're doing is talking. So it's a whole different level of comfort and excitement, adrenaline. And the other thing too, Susan, I noticed when I would drive to court, let's say a 45-minute ride, in those 45 minutes, I would gather my thoughts, and it was a very peaceful time. And I would prep in my mind where I wanted to go when I got into the argument, and I would think things through. So it was a really nice, it was a nice time that I was in my car by myself, just working things out. When you're in your office and you have a 10 a.m. argument, at 5 of 10, you may jump on and all of a sudden it's go time. You didn't really have that time to settle into a groove. And similarly, when the argument was over in court, you could drive back to the office and kind of debrief in your head on how things went. I'm sure you're no different than others. You go at, no doubt, Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call with not a lot of time to catch your breath.
And I think that debriefing time is really important. I know for me, I work from home, so there's there's never that change in environment either. And I think that's what a lot of people are finding being locked down. That's why it's so important to get out and go for a walk or do something.
I agree. There's in my continuing legal education seminar. So licensed lawyers in the States, we need X number of hours of credits to keep your license. So I do a 1-hour program where a lawyer who listens to the program can get 1 hour of continuing legal education credit. I just did one last week, and I show these statistics. There's a publication in the States, the American Lawyer Magazine, ALM. They do a mental health and substance abuse survey every year. So the 2020 survey came out in May of 2021, so 5 months ago. In that survey, Susan, in 2020, 70% of the respondents, and there were 3,200 of them, so 70%, so more than 2,100, said the pandemic has made their mental health worse. That's a startling number because it's collateral damage too. And again, limited to the law firm, although there's studies that it's not limited to the law, to the legal profession. But think of that collateral damage. So this respondent has said, yes, this pandemic's made my mental health worse. That impacts their relationships with their families. That impacts the health system. I'm reading now the wait for beds for the hospitals that help these folks is 3, 4, 5 days. There aren't enough practitioners. There aren't enough beds. And it's almost as if the system is collapsing under itself. It's just, there's such a domino effect.
Yeah.
And again, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it just feels like it's going to get worse,
Agreed. And I just got through the pandemic. I have a joke. I call it pedaling through the pandemic. That's what I thought I did in 2020 and we're done, but we're not done. So I'm doing it again through 2021. perhaps someday I'll write a book and that'll be the title, Pedaling Through the Pandemic. But that has gotten me through the pandemic. I get on my bike and it keeps me in a tempo, and it allows me to deal with what is going on. That's been kind of my saving grace throughout this whole thing.
Well, we talked about that the last time we spoke together, and you told me that you pedal for other people too, so people can ring up and ask you to do some miles for.
Sure. And if I'll elaborate on that, I would love to.
Yeah.
So last year, 2020, I rode about, I rode 3,600 miles, which might be, what's that? A little over 5,000 plus kilometers. So this year I decided I'm going to ride 5,000 miles, which is over 8,000 kilometers. So I started to do that. And towards the end of August, I had hit the same goal as last year. And I thought, okay, I have 4 months and 1,400 miles to go, or a little over 2,200 kilometers. And it's much more meaningful to dedicate these miles to somebody in their honor or their memory. So I put out on LinkedIn, I called it the 4 for 1,400, and I held a sign and I said, we'll ride for you. And I asked people if they've been sober for 15 years, I'll ride 15 miles for them. If they have a wedding anniversary, if they have a loved one that passed away, how long was that loved one alive? And the responses, Susan, have been unbelievable. I've ridden miles for wedding anniversaries, folks that have lost loved ones. I did a 48-mile one for a young lady who died, a friend's sister-in-law. She was 48. I just did 46 a couple weeks ago for a friend whose brother died at the age of 46, who I knew. Really incredible things. And this ancillary benefit that's come out of it, 2 of the rides, at least 2, once I rode for the person, they then made a donation to a charity of my choice. That was not my intent, but now I've got charities that are benefiting from this. I just did for a friend, Joe Perrone, who I believe you know, I rode 120 miles for him, about 200 kilometers. I did that last week. And then he responded and said, $120 to whatever charity. There is a veterans legal center here in the States that helps, or in Connecticut, that helps military veterans who are suffering from mental illness and homelessness, helps them with their legal problems and get back up on their feet. So Joe has made a donation because I rode those miles. I never asked him for that. So there's so much good that's coming out of this, and it makes it a lot more fun. So even though I'm riding these miles alone, I'm not really alone because I'm riding them for somebody else. So it's kind of neat.
It is. It's really cool. I could get you to ride 67 miles for me. 20 minutes before we started this podcast, I heard that a friend of mine had passed away. So it would be pretty fitting if you did 67.
Okay, I will do 67. I will do 67 miles for your friend. Absolutely.
I'll try not to cry now. I'll wait till we're finished talking and then I'll go and have a big ball.
Yeah. No, I'd be honored to do that. And again, it's just more, it's more meaningful to be able to do this. And again, there's been so many neat things that have come out of it. I'll give you another, for instance, there's a group in Connecticut that tries to connect senior citizens because of the issue of loneliness is so prevalent, especially heightened during the pandemic. And I'm doing 2 rides for them. I did 41 miles for them. And that's a statistic that said seniors that are lonely have a 41% higher chance of suffering from dementia than if they're not lonely. So that's an incredible number. And it raises awareness for these issues. So it's very rewarding. Even though I'm doing this for others, I'm getting more out of it myself.
Yeah.
So.
It's very special. I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea. So getting back to the coaching and getting people on track and taking care of their health and wellness, what would be some of the most powerful questions you ask your clients in order to help them shift their perspective?
One of the first ones would be, why are you doing this? Are you doing this for yourself, or are you doing this to impress somebody else? Because that's really important. When it's very dark and very cold out in the morning, it's really hard to get out of bed and do your workout if you're just doing it to impress somebody else. But if you're really doing it for yourself, you're going to be able to find, I think, deep reservoirs of passion that'll allow you to go out and do it. So that's one of the questions is, why are you doing this? Another one is, what do you want to accomplish? Do you want to just feel better about yourself? Do you want to help your relationships with others? Do you want to win medals? So it's who are you doing this for, and why are you doing it? Those are two really, really big questions. And I think people need to figure those things out. Again, last week, like I said, I rode 120 miles. That took me 7.5 hours. I could not have done that if I did not have the passion to do what I'm doing and really enjoy it. I didn't do it to impress anyone. I did it because I wanted to do it, and that allowed me. So again, there are a lot of dark and cold mornings here. I live in Connecticut, which is in New England, the northern part of the States, and we have long, dark winters. And so long as the snow's not on the ground and it's safe to ride, I'll get out there and ride. And it's really cold, but it's very rewarding. So that's what gets me up and out of bed to do those things. So I would want to know why that person is doing it, and who are they doing it for? And there aren't any wrong answers, but I think it's a shallow pool if you're doing it to impress somebody else.
It is. And that makes it all the more difficult to maintain it as well, because then we end up with just this sort of like short-term pain that we can tolerate. We'll do something for 10 weeks or a 6-week challenge or a month, but it's doing it year in and year out that becomes the real struggle.
Yeah, and I think when people break through, it's a very intoxicating feeling. I know I lost my fitness, like I said, in those 4 or 5 years, in all candor, the first 4 or 5 years of practice, and I was not in good shape, and I decided to do something about it. And when I first got back into it, Susan, I could not run 2 miles. It was really, really hard to do that. I'd stop and I'd start and I'd stop and I'd start. And I thought, wow, I have fallen. I have fallen really far. But that was half the fun of kind of rebuilding it, getting it back. And there's a lot of fun that's involved. But there's also some camaraderie too. I found the fitness community. I know you're an avid kayaker. I don't know if the kayaking community is like this, but the cycling and running communities that I am a part of, it's a very warm embrace. And people I find are very, very welcoming, and they will help lift you up. And you'll find, at least I do, that sense of community that for a lot of folks has been taken away during the pandemic. It gives you back that sense of community, and that's also a real upside.
And I think you have people from all walks of life participating, so you sort of get out of your normal, routine and groups of people, and you've got these shared experiences that you've got to be there and doing it to be able to share those experiences. So that's really empowering and connecting.
It is. So, I'll give you another example. last Saturday, not this past one, but 2 Saturdays ago, I entered a 5K road race in Hartford, Connecticut. And 5 kilometers is 3.1 miles. And I mentioned this during my training program. I had one the Friday before the race and one the Monday after. The race organizers had a course limit of 80 minutes, 1 hour and 20 minutes. So I was trying to drive home the point that that's plus or minus 27 minutes per mile. What that translates into is everybody is welcome. Some people ran really, really fast. Other people pushed a stroller, and you had everybody in between. So by setting a course limit of 80 minutes, the race people are really saying, this is for everyone. This is not for, if an Olympic athlete shows up, great. But this is really every person's race, and you can race it, you can walk it, you can do something in between. But I was trying to convey the energy. There were over 1,000 people in this 5 kilometer, and the positive energy was, it was palpable. It was really incredible, and everybody's on the same footing. We have to call, when you go into court, you call a judge, Your Honor. And there was a judge, he's now retired, a friend of mine, and I would address him as Your Honor or Judge blank. And he loved to run, and I'd see him at road races. And the first time I saw him at a road race, he's dressed just like me. He has a running shirt, shorts, and sneakers. And I looked at him, I said, hey, Judge. And he said, hey, Carl. And I said, do I have to call you Your Honor when we're in a road race together? And he said, no, call me Bob. So in that road race, we were just Bob and Carl. And we were all on the same footing, to your point. Yeah, on the same level. So, that 3.1 mile, 5 kilometer road race welcomed everyone. So I just did a post on LinkedIn saying road races are for everyone. Go find one in your community, because, I understand you're at your level 3 lockdown, which I have read is rather draconian, but if and when those are lifted, find a road race, because they're tremendous boosts of energy. And you feed off of it.
So people who have never exercised before or have exercised in fits and starts, how do you get them started? What's the process?
I would start small with either a 10 or 20 minute workout. And a very simple workout is a high school track is 400 meters. One loop around a high school track is 400 meters. Go walk it and then run it, and then walk it and then run it for 10 minutes. Start there. And if you don't have access to a track, if you live in a rural area, you can walk off 400 meters from your house or in a field. And again, run the 400 meters, walk back, run it again, walk back, put your watch on 10 minutes. And then you're up and moving. I'm a big believer in just forward motion. Another thing you could do is warm up a little bit, run 1 mile as fast as you can, and then cool down, however long that takes. That might take you 12 minutes. It might take you 10 minutes. It might take you 15, but that's it. And again, I could not do 2 miles when I started training for a marathon many years ago, but I got through it, and you'll begin to see the progress, and it's very rewarding, and that will then fuel you even more. And you can do a lot of these workouts, Susan, without equipment. I mentioned Peloton. I don't have one, but my understanding is they're phenomenal machines. They're also very expensive, and folks may not be able to afford a Peloton. So that a simple workout like I described, the 400 meters, walk, run, that's free. You just need either good walking shoes or a pair of running shoes.
Yeah, and then just starting really tiny and then building it up very slowly.
Right. So there's a periodical, a magazine, Runner's World, and I like to there's a quote. There was a gentleman they identified, they interviewed him, and he used to smoke 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day. And he decided this is enough. So every time he wanted to smoke a cigarette, in lieu of doing that, he ran to his mailbox, 25 yards. And he said, the first time I did it, I got to the mailbox, I wanted to throw up. But then it got easier. And then he decided to run to a telephone pole, and then run to a tree down the street, and then run to a local park. This 2.5 pack smoker, by doing that, ultimately ran a ultra marathon, anything longer than the marathon distance. This gentleman, 65 years old, ran an ultra marathon. And he said, I ran it very slowly, but slow as I go, I'm faster than my couch. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that quote. I love that guy's outlook. So he had the urge to smoke, and in lieu of that, just started, again, running to his mailbox. He started really, really small, and he ultimately worked up to what he worked up to. And he had a fantastic attitude. And, I thought, 8-10 days ago, I looked at all these folks in the 5 kilometer. It started at 8 in the morning. And by 9 in the morning, a lot of the folks were done, and they had just done something that a large percentage of the population in the state would not have done that day. They went out there and either walked, run, or a combination of both, 3.1 miles. And that was theirs for the day.
Mm.
And that's a big deal, and that should be celebrated.
Mm. And I think celebration is really important, but I do think the tiny habits, and also rather than trying to stop bad habits, I think what you just spoke about, replacing, putting something else in place is super important. I did tiny habits training with BJ Fogg from Stanford University. And so lots of people will be aware of James Clear's book on habits. And James was one of BJ Fogg's students as well. And so BJ teaches this tiny habits system. And rather than trying to break bad habits, like I'm not going to smoke, it's you use getting the cigarettes out as a trigger to go and implement something else. And you keep it really tiny. So it might be one of BJ's classics was when you go to the bathroom, you'll do 5 push-ups after each time you go to the bathroom. Or
that's brilliant.
You put the kettle on and you might do 5 body weight squats while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. So you have a trigger, and then you have a really tiny habit that you do that's really easy to do, and then you do it multiple times. Mm.
Well, and I've read articles where a lot of people binge eat. We know that. I used to, when I was out of shape, I used to binge eat fettuccine Alfredo. I know that. So if you want to binge eat bananas, or binge eat grapes, something like that, to your point. But I can tell you there's a company in the States that has a very tasty non-alcoholic beer. I had never heard of it. 2 years ago, I did a very long bike race. At the finish, a lot of folks like to have a beer after a long bike ride. So we finish in this park, and there is this company with this non-alcoholic IPA beer. And they were just starting out, and everybody kind of looked at it. And then we all had one, and they were really, really tasty. They're now everywhere. Mm-hmm. So, and their marketing is brilliant. They're saying, listen, we know you folks like the taste, you athletes, you like the taste of IPAs. And we've got one that is basically, we've removed all the alcohol. There's less alcohol in it than a couple day old banana, and replace that can of Budweiser with this can of this other stuff. So we're seeing a lot more of that, trying to, and it's not social engineering. It's just, hey, there are alternatives. Why don't you try this? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of neat to see.
Because one of the things I teach people is, if you come home and have that beer and chips or wine and chocolate or whatever, is make sure you've had I believe protein is super important for our health and well-being, as we age, reducing sarcopenia, maintaining muscle, which keeps our metabolism very high. And I think protein is really undervalued in our dietary recommendations currently. So I teach people, just eat your protein first and then eat whatever you want.
Right.
And don't punish yourself, and don't say, I can't have this, so I can't have that, but come home and have, some nice cheese or some chicken drumsticks or something, and then have some wine and chocolate and enjoy it.
Yeah. It's ironic you mentioned protein, because a few years back, more than a few, maybe 20, I was running a lot of races, and on some of them I wasn't happy with my nutrition and hydration. So I reached out to a nutritionist, and she was in New York City, and it was wonderful to work with her. She said, I want to see a food diary. So mark everything down for a week and tell me what you do during races. And I remember we jumped on a call. This is pre-Zoom. We were just on the phone. And she said, so Carl, where's your protein? And I started fumbling and bumbling. And I said, well, she said, you need protein. So this was 20 plus years ago. She got me kind of on that protein train. And I was very grateful for that, very much so. But the other point I wanted to make is, I don't view exercise and the caloric burn as a way to stay even. So if I go out and ride 50 miles and I burn, say, 3,500 calories, that doesn't mean that night I can pound 3,500 calories of ice cream because, well, I have a clean slate and let's fill it up. I don't look at it as a way to stay even. I want my caloric burn to be higher than my caloric intake. So I'm kind of getting ahead of the game.
Yeah,
so I don't.
Lots of people
you understand that.
Yeah, lots of people play that game. They only exercise to earn their calories.
Right.
And so they think, well, if I do this exercise, then I can eat this, or then I can eat that, which I think is kind of a real wrong way of looking at it. And we gain weight sort of 1 kilogram at a time, really. So yeah.
And again, I think people, if they start small, it's helpful for folks to kind of think of a goal. Is there some goal that you want, and what is that goal? And then we can kind of back out from there, and we'll get you there. It helps to have a plan. Tying in the legal profession, a lot of so-called institutional clients are large companies, insurance companies and the like. They want their lawyers to come up with a litigation plan. What is your roadmap from the beginning of this lawsuit to the end of it? What are your estimated hours? What are the resources you need? And that allows them, that you then have a dollar figure, and then allows them to reserve money for this lawsuit. So lawyers have these transferable skills, as others do. There's planning, strategic planning in every profession. If you're able to put together a strategic plan for your business or your profession, then you're able to put together a fitness plan. They're very transferable skills, and there's far less pressure in putting together a fitness plan. You can be a little more playful with it. And the thing I like to tell lawyers, at least, is if you violate an order from the court, they can sanction you. You get in trouble. If you deviate from your fitness plan, you're not going to get sanctioned. You just might be a day behind, and you just have to play a little catch up. But nobody's getting sanctioned, so it's not as, you use the word draconian. It's not as draconian as a court order. It's just your fitness plan, which is important. But if you violate it, that's okay.
Yeah, although I do want to talk to you a bit about breaking commitments, because I think you have some sort of opinions about that, don't you? Like if people are constantly saying, I'm going to do this, and then you keep breaking that commitment to yourself and chipping away at it, you lose your trust and confidence in your word to yourself.
Very much so. It's, and again, I always had, when I was running a lot more, now I'm riding more than I'm running, but when I was running, I had a standing date with a friend on a Friday morning. We would run 10 miles every morning. And we didn't even have to talk to each other. We just knew when I pulled into that parking lot, we met halfway between our houses. When I pulled into that lot, I knew that he would be there or vice versa. You just knew that that person would be there. So another tip is the accountability factor. If you schedule a workout with a friend or a family member, there's that accountability. If your alarm rings, it's 5:30 in the morning, and you don't want to get up, but if you don't get up, then you're going to let that person down. That's very helpful. But as far as the commitment goes, I do occasionally play golf. I enjoy golf. When I'm playing it, I love it. When I'm not playing it, I don't even think about it. But there are people that cheat in golf, and I've often scratched my head thinking, who are they cheating? What is the point of that? I never understood that. And there's really, unless you're in the Olympics or other competitions, in a road race, there's no cheating. There's a start line and there's a finish line. There was the famous Boston marathoner, Rosie Ruiz, who claimed victory, but later was determined she took the subway. That's probably the most infamous cheater, but there isn't a lot of cheating that goes on in road races. Again, there's a start, there's a finish, there's a female winner and there's a male winner. That's refreshingly simple. And you're out there doing your workout, and if you want to cut it short because of a commitment or you're hurt, then do that. But if you have a fitness log and you run 5 miles, but you mark 7 in your fitness log, I don't get the point of that. I don't know what the person's doing. It's similar. Everybody's golfed with people that have cheated, and you kind of scratch your head thinking, well, so what's that? What are they getting out of that? Do they feel better doing that? I don't know. So I think having a plan and working in, again, guide rails, like working out with your friends where there's an accountability component, that's very helpful.
And I think, again, we'll use that word draconian. It's probably not the right word, but again, you don't have to be so locked into your plan that there's no flexibility, but you want to have a commitment to your plan. And I often say to people, if you've got a run plan today or a gym workout and you can't make it, just do something. Go and do those 5 push-ups on the lounge floor. Just do something to keep you going.
Big believer in that. There's 100 examples. We've all been stuck in airports. And if you have to, at the last minute, you have a last minute business flight or something you have to catch, you've got to get out of town and you miss your workout, you're stuck in an airport, because we've all been stuck in airports. And hopefully now we put the COVID in the rearview mirror and we'll be back to airports. But if you have a half hour in an airport, it's a great place to walk. You see fascinating people. You look at the departure boards, you look at the arrival boards, and you wonder, you think, wow, there's all these folks arriving from wherever. They've got stories, and it's just, you can lose time. I think a half hour of walking in an airport goes by like nothing. It feels like 5 minutes because there's so much stimulation. So that's just a good way to use time in an airport. So again, to your point, it doesn't have to be draconian. You can have some fun out of it. I always go, if I go to a store, I'll park in the furthest spot in the parking lot, just so I have the farthest distance to walk to the door.
And it's all those little bite-sized pieces that really add up to the day,
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
You were talking about goal setting before, and do you have a process for goal setting? I often talk to people about, thinking about how you want to be showing up in the world, say in, 2 years or 5 years. And then, you're talking about that plan, bringing how you want to do that. If you want to stay on track for that, how do you bring that back to like what I have to do today, this week, this month?
Yeah, I think a couple things when you're kind of formulating a goal. One of them is to I think it's helpful to dream, and it's okay to dream. It's fun to dream. So, do you have a dream goal, and is there a way that we can get there? And the dream can be audacious, but in order to get there, you've got to start small. And when you're setting that goal, you've got to investigate things like, is this doable? An investigation of the goal includes budgets. Things cost money. So you may
Mm.
want to do this, but the question is, can you afford it? And I'll give you a good example. I first ran the New York City Marathon in 1995. It was 37 US dollars to run that race. Most recently, the New York City Marathon is up around 275 US dollars. Now, I happen to live 200 kilometers from New York. I can drive there, but New York has a lot of international runners. They have to fly in. So, these so-called destination marathons, you have flights, you have hotels, you have meals. So if you have this goal of running the London Marathon or the Berlin Marathon, these world marathons, you've got to get there. So can you afford it? So that's something you got to think about. So you just do a little investigation, and is this something that I can accomplish? And the other thing is, you got to consider what's going on in your life. I was training for a marathon in 2005, and my wife and I had another child, and I was not able to work that marathon in because it was more important to be home with my then 4-year-old and this new baby. So that marathon took a back seat, which was okay.
Mm.
So you've got to be really flexible as well.
Mm.
The rigidity doesn't always work. I mean, life in
Flexible discipline.
pardon me.
Flexible discipline.
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, Joan Benoit Samuelson, who's an American Olympic marathoner, she medaled in the 1984 Olympics in LA. She described the marathon distance as a snake. And she said that snake can be very calm, but it can turn around and bite you, and you need to be ready for that. So it's a question of how do you deal with that? So flexibility in life also parlays into fitness. And you've got to allow for injury, and you've got to listen to your body. I'm completely and utterly fascinated with the human body. I think it's a magical and mystical machine, and it talks to you. You know that.
Mm.
You're the health detective.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would never have thought that medicine would have interested me, but as soon as I realized the human body was just this amazing machine that just does everything in its power to stay fit and healthy and as well as it possibly can, regardless of all the kind of rubbish and shit that we throw at it, I just got absolutely fascinated by it. Like, how does all this work and how does this all go together?
And I'll tell you, I burnt myself out running probably 10 or 12 years ago. I realized I needed to take a break, and I fell out of love with running. And then I found this book by Christopher McDougall called Born to Run. And McDougall spent time with a tribe in Mexico in the Copper Canyon, where this particular tribe, they run 50, 60, 70 miles a day. And he said their philosophy is that the human body was born to run. And I realized when I read this book, it was very cathartic, because I realized that I was doing a lot of my runs at that time for the wrong reason. It was all the watch. So what I decided to do is I read this book and I felt revitalized, and I ditched the watch and I just ran for the love of running. I would go into the woods and run. And if it took me 45 minutes, it took me 45 minutes. If it took me 10, it took me 10. I just allowed myself the freedom to meander, keeping in mind this tribe in Mexico. I wasn't running 50 miles, but I was thinking of McDougall's book where he said, we are born to run the way the body is built. And it's kind of fascinating when you think about it. And it's fascinating what the human body can do. I love a lot of the nonfiction that I read are books about human endurance and what humans can do if they put their minds to it.
Mm.
Really incredible stuff.
Mm. And I think recovery is such an important part of that fitness journey if you're going to do it long term as well. Like you said, ditching the watch, because I think people get really fixated on always trying to do better than yesterday, you know. And in the gym, we always say you can't do a personal best every time you go out and lift weights. You know, you've got to go up and down, and you've got to have hard days and easy days and moderate days and recovery weeks, and, you know, just allow the body that time to recover properly. That's how it gets stronger, and it can tolerate more stress.
Very much so. In my continuing legal education slide deck, I have a slide which is a snapshot of one of my marathon training programs. And it's got a lot of mileage in there. And what I say, Susan, is I'm putting this up for you. This is not to impress, it's merely to inform. And I draw everybody's attention to the Tuesdays and Fridays in the columns. It's about a 10 or 12 week training program. Tuesdays and Fridays were rest days.
Mm.
So I'm pointing this out to the attendees of the program, and I'm saying, see, I work in rest days. These are I find them to be critically important. It's no different than your job. You can't run 7 days a week at your job. You can't do your job 7 days a week. You can't do it 24/7, although people want you to be 24/7. It's not a sustainable method.
Mm.
And I have friends that run that refuse to take a day off. And I always say to them, hey, I'm not getting preachy, but days off are very helpful.
Mm.
They're very, very helpful. So I have that screenshot up there, and I'm not putting it up there to say, look at how many miles I used to train for marathons. I put it up there to say, see, I worked in rest days and they were helpful. And I would invite you to do the same.
Well, a lot of people start their fitness journey because they want to lose weight, which I think is a fairly valid reason. You know, they've been sitting at that office desk like we talked about. And so they start, in whatever, riding their bikes, running, going to the gym. And then they wonder why they don't lose weight, because they think it's all about calories in and calories out. But I think there's a real misunderstanding about the effect that stress has on weight gain and making weight loss really difficult. And we have so many different stresses, we have emotional and psychological stress, and we have nutritional stress when we're not getting enough proper nutrients, stress from not sleeping properly. But we also have this huge amount of stress from overtraining, or rather under recovery, not so much that you're doing too much, but you're not allowing enough recovery. And I think a lot of people would find that the weight that they'd like to use, they would like to lose by having done that exercise, might improve if they actually took some time off and did a little bit less at times.
I agree with you 100%. And I've focused more in the last couple of years, Susan, on sleep and good sleep hygiene. And it's really, my bedroom is on the second floor of my house. My phone does not come upstairs. I shut my phone off, and it's in the kitchen. And I don't see that when I go upstairs. I won't see that for 7 or 8 hours. I do not. It's a very rare occasion where it's up if my family's away and I need to leave it on for some reason. It might be 5 days out of the year, but I don't do electronics in the bedroom. I try to cut down on the screen time. I mean, there's so much of the sleep hygiene, but also alcohol and its impact on sleep. There are studies that abound with folks think, you have a little nightcap, it'll help you sleep. It actually interrupts your REM sleep. And I know a lot of people track their sleep now, and you can see the negative impact that alcohol has on sleep. And so I've been kind of fascinated and reading a lot more about good sleep hygiene and how it impacts really everything. It's yet another foundational building block to perhaps the weight gain that you speak of.
Yeah, well, you need that growth hormone production, which you get, I think, in the first sort of 20 minutes of that first part of your sleep cycle, because we have like five or six sleep cycles every night. And so we keep going through repeating these phases. So we need that release of human growth hormone for recovery and resilience, but then also cortisol. When you look at the effects that cortisol have on changing our hormonal balance, and we see more and more men, with lower testosterone and higher estrogens and things like that, and stress plays a huge role in that happening. And the nutrients that make testosterone also make cortisol, and there's only so much of each that can be made. So if you're under a lot of stress, your testosterone will go down and your cortisol is going to get quite high. Then it makes it really hard to lose weight. And then you have all these drivers for these foods that you probably shouldn't be eating and drinking alcohol. So it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and I'm also fascinated with ingredients in food. I will spend time at the market reading about what goes into food. I just bought a peanut butter the other day, and it was far more liquidy than another peanut butter. And I looked at the label, and it said ingredients: salted peanuts. That was it. It didn't have various oils that acted as a kind of a thickener. So it might have been more syrupy or soupy, but it, I believe, is better for you. The least, the lower number of ingredients, the better off. Little things like that. But, I have a screenshot. I linked to a study from the University of Michigan, and in my program, we just touch on, it's above my pay grade to get into the mental health arena. I just simply indicate that studies will support the fact that physical activity is a good way to address depression, anxiety, and stress in your life. So that's a well-known fact.
Yeah, it is a well-known fact, and it just makes you so much more productive at work. So, for the workaholics out there, you can perform a lot better.
Agreed. I have incredible clarity of thought when I ride my bike. I refuse to run a ride with music. I have AirPods in now, but I've never done that. One of the reasons is safety, but the other is I'm not able to listen to myself if I'm listening to music. And there are times on my bike where I bring my phone for safety purposes. It's not on. I will actually pull off the road and peck out something in the notes section because I've thought of it. And there was a joke in my firm. I would get into work, I'd go into a partner's office, and I'd say, "Hey, Al, I had this idea." And he'd say to me, "Oh, so you went riding this morning?" And I'd say, "Yes." They would know that I'd have these ideas. And a former colleague, she's now with another organization, but she would text me and say, "Carl, are you going riding tomorrow?" And I'd say, "Yes, what do you need?" And she'd respond, "We're doing a fundraiser. This is what we want. And we need a title. Can you give me 3 suggested titles?" I said, "You'll have them by noon tomorrow." And off I go on my bike. And, as I ride, I think about it, and I get off the bike, and boom, I send her an email or a text saying, "Hey, I got 3 ideas for you." These are all exercise induced ideas.
Yeah. Great. Stimulation for creativity.
It works for me. Folks like to take walks in the woods. I get that. I like that as well. If I'm not riding or running in the morning, I'll walk my dog. And in that half hour, I think of things. It's just me and the dog, and and it's dark and we're alone and I think of stuff. It's just very helpful to me.
Yeah, it's great.
So
I think you've got a story you tell about your mum. Have you?
yes,
Story. Would you share your story about your mum with us?
sure. My mom going to college.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my mother got married young, and she spent a little time in college, but then did not finish. And she raised the three of us, my younger brother and my older sister and me, and never got around to getting back to college. And my father passed away, and that was one of his wishes, was that she would go back to college. So she did that. And at the age of 78, graduated with an associate's degree. And it was a huge deal. And she did that for a number of reasons. One is it was a promise to our dad, but also she has since passed away, but she has had grandchildren, and she wanted her getting her degree to be an example to her grandchildren. She has 3 granddaughters and a grandson. And she said before she passed that she did it for them to serve as an example. So she had this goal, and it took a while to accomplish it, but she did not give up on it. And I'll tell you it's a very emotional thing. She had enough credits to graduate, but knew that with the cancer, she wouldn't make the graduation. So somehow my sister worked with the school. So the dean and the president of the college came into my mother's hospital room, and they presented her with her diploma on a Tuesday, and she passed away on a Friday. So she did it, and it was a big deal. And she was quite an example to our kids and my brother's children. So
an amazing mum. I think it's an absolutely beautiful story that, we can achieve the things that we want to in life. And
absolutely. And I will tell you that my mother was very, very, very humble. And we had lunch one day, and she had made the dean's list. Her GPA was above a certain level, made the dean's list. And she leaned over and in a very conspiratorial whisper said, "Do you think my name will be in the paper?" And I said, "Yes, I think it will be." Now, that was so out of character for her because she was such a humble woman. And sure enough, it was in the paper. And I got a text from one of my friends saying, "I read your mom's name in the paper, clearly smarter than her 2 sons." So, one of her classes was a criminal law class. She needed to sit through a trial. So I took her to the federal courthouse in Hartford, Connecticut, and we sat through a couple hours of testimony in a drug trial. And she was fascinated watching that. And then she later wrote about it. And I had an admin assistant at my law firm that so loved my mother, she would type my mother's papers. She said, if I can do anything for your mother, you need to tell me. So my mother would pen and paper, scratch out her papers, then get them to me, and my admin at work would type them for my mother because she loved her so much. So this degree, Susan, was kind of a team effort. She had everybody kind of pulling for her. And the fact that my sister pulled off this commencement ceremony in the hospital room was just amazing. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, very, very inspirational. I thought people would like to hear about that.
Yeah, and again, it's regardless of the age, she did it. And and speaking of age, I look at Mick Jagger, for instance. He was born in 1943. So Mick Jagger, I believe, 78 years old. He's a pretty physically fit guy. He's doing what he's doing because he has a fitness component in his life. That what Mick Jagger does not happen overnight.
Mind you, he's always looked like he was 78 years old.
Yeah, but he acts like a 35-year-old when he's on stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's just running back and forth, and this goes on for hours. But you know, Mick's got a fitness component, and so even at his age, so you look at Mick, and yeah, I'd like to be doing what Mick's doing when I'm 78.
Yeah,
so
definitely very inspiring. So do
very
you have
so.
any last words for people? Any last little gems of knowledge?
I would remind them that they're not alone in this journey, and there's no need to go it alone, even though some of your workouts may be alone. Like I said, I find the fitness community to be very, very warm. It lifts people up. If you're having a bad day, your mates or in your fitness community, I think, will lift you up. Going to see your friends, to go kayaking like you do, or hiking or running, that will lift you up. So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of loneliness during the pandemic, and I think there's camaraderie and warmth and empathy in the fitness community. So if people are starting this journey, I would just like to encourage them that they are not alone. There's a tremendous support group out there that can help them, because we never get to where we get alone. We all have help. You know, I've learned from some great folks. I've tried to follow what they've followed, and I've learned from them, even though they may not know it. I picked certain things up from them. So I never felt like I was alone, and I would not want people to think, gosh, I'm all alone doing this. You're not. So
can you tell people where they can find you? Because you
Sure.
run online programs, don't you? So they don't have to be in the US to be able to work with you, or?
That's correct. So my website is carlficks.com, my name, CarlFicks.com. And if they go on that website, or they go carlficks.com/free, there's a little paper that I have that I'd love to share with your audience. It's basically 10 steps to getting back in the game, back in the fitness game. And these are just a couple of ideas, things that have worked for me, and again, might be helpful to others. So I would invite them to do that, carlficks/free, carlficks.com/free, and invite them to try one or more out. And I think they might find them helpful.
Great. Well, we'll put that in the show notes as well, Carl, so people can track you down. And then you've got a LinkedIn profile. I think you post blogs fairly regularly on LinkedIn.
I do, yes. Thank you for that. It's anybody can find me on LinkedIn. It's Carl R. Ficks Jr. I'd love to connect with folks. I have a weekly thing I call the Friday Fix, which is just kind of play on my last name. What I try to do, Susan, is just give one little nugget of inspiration or wisdom. I try to embed a lesson that I learned in my life that might be helpful, and something that folks might be able to fall back on during the week. And I do that once a week. You know, last week I just started it this year. Last week was week 41. And my post last week was, when I was in law school, I backed into a car and nobody saw it. And the question is, do I leave my name? And it was an easy choice. I left my name. I said, sorry for hitting your car. I had my phone number. And because I identified myself, the guy didn't make me pay for his car, and I couldn't have afforded denting his car because I was in law school and I had no money. So I would just, it's like that. It was taking ownership of something, which I'm a big believer in. You know, I sign off on each post. I say, own the day, own the weekend. People need to own what they're doing and get behind it. So I do that once a week. And then I have a newspaper column twice a month, which is the same title, the Friday Fix. So.
Great. Well, we'll make sure that people know where to find you and they can follow your work. You don't have a Facebook page at the moment.
No Surrender has a Facebook page, but in all candor, I'm not that active on Facebook, more on LinkedIn. I do have a personal Facebook page. People can find me, and I'm trying really at the urging of my daughters to be a little more active on Facebook. They tell me I need to be.
There's so much technology out there, it gets a bit overwhelming sometimes.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
trying.
Hey, thank you so much for your time today. I really
Well,
enjoyed talking with you and hearing your little gems.
thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay. Bye now.